Hello and welcome to Discover Energy Work. I've been away for a while, and it's just because I wanted to find some really interesting people
Hold
to
on.
talk
I have
to.
to. I'm not recording yet. Okay. Go ahead. Start again.
Okay,
Or whatever.
okay. Hello and welcome to Discover Energy Work. I've been away for a little while because I wanted to find some really, really interesting people for you to listen to and hear the stories about. And I came across a book. You know, I've been fascinated in energy work and all different aspects of it. And I came across a book of this chap called Robert Chuckrow. And I just, you know, Bluebird, I just sent him an email. I said, would you appear on my podcast, Discover Energy Work? And lo and behold, I really, really like his book because they've got this sort of scientific, um, let's assume we know nothing sort of approach. Really, really appreciate that. And they're really good books on Tai Chi, which I can really recommend. And I could also feel, I felt Robert might have some really interesting stories to tell us. So welcome, Robert. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm fine.
Great. And you've got the most incredible background in martial arts, covering mostly Tai Chi, but also Ninjitsu, you were saying. So do you want to tell us where this started? I mean, were you fascinated in Kung Fu and Bruce Lee, or what happened? What got you started?
Well, what happened is I was driving my car up the hill near my house. The road is very steep, and this kid was coming towards me on a bicycle, coming down the hill, and he was out of control. And so I didn't want to be moving when he hit my car. So I stopped my car and just waited. And when it came to the point where he was going to hit my car, he swerved to the left and hit the curb. And the front wheel hit the curb, and the bicycle lifted up, and he was catapulted forward. And I figured this kid is going to hit his head against the sidewalk because it was very steep, and so the
Yes.
sidewalk is higher. And he did a perfect roll and then got back up on his bike. And I said, I have to learn how to roll. I have to
Okay.
learn that. And so I decided I was going to study Aikido, which I was. And all that would happen is I was getting hurt. And people in the class were getting hurt a lot. It was very a form of Aikido that was very martial,
Mhm.
not not like Aikido that I had studied years before. So I would come to the class about a half an hour early just to warm up and get ready myself for, I was probably in my 50s at the time, maybe late 50s. So I'd warm up and get ready for this brutal workout. Just the warm up was brutal.
Mm.
And so there was a class that was there before the Aikido class that was using the space. And I saw these people doing rolling, and instead of when they rolled, they made a lot of noise with their feet and slapped the mat, very dramatic. It was so quiet you didn't hear anything. They blended so beautifully. And then I watched them do martial arts things, and I said, "My God, this is like Tai Chi. If it's in a way, it's more like Tai Chi than the Tai Chi I've learned, because it involved all kinds of things. It involved weapons and realistic weapons for today's world. It involved groundwork, floor work. It involved all kinds of things. So I decided I'd try a class. And I remember the teacher saying, I was wondering when you were going to come into the class because I was watching you watch the class and I saw that you wanted to be in it. So I stayed with that for about 20 years. Now, of course, I'm not in a young body anymore, and certainly now, and even at that point, I wasn't able to do is what other people were able to do. but I was also, and also I had, you know, a lot of responsibilities teaching taiji and teaching physics, etc. So it was hard for me to make what I wanted, the kind of progress I wanted, but I feel I got a pretty good understanding of the concepts and also the elements of it. So it was a great experience, and it led to my understanding Taiji much better than I did.
You're talking about ninjitsu now, are you?
Ninjitsu, yes.
Right. So can we say you're a ninja?
Um, an early stage of learning to be one,
Right. Okay. I
but
understand.
moving in that direction.
Right. But doesn't ninja mean like patient, the patient person, something like that in Japanese, or
I'm sorry, say that
the
again.
the kanji for ninja, isn't it patience?
The Oh, I don't know.
It's yeah, it's
Yeah.
like the knife the knife over the heart, knife cutting over the heart. It's like patience. Somebody
Uh,
who is patient. Yeah. Um, I might not be right. It's just what I remember of the Chinese characters of ninjas. So um, there's a lot of like perception training, isn't there, in ninjutsu? Yeah. Do you want to tell us
well,
about that?
yeah. Well, a lot of the history of it had to do with their being isolated. They had their own villages that they had to protect constantly because there were always samurai coming in and trying to wipe them out. But they also were assassins. They also worked for the government when they were needed. In the 1500s, when the Portuguese came in with firearms,
Hmm.
the ninja had, or within a couple of weeks, the ninja had stolen firearms from the Portuguese ships and created them. But the emperor didn't like that. They wanted people to use swords. But they were very advanced in terms of their abilities and in their understanding of what was important and what wasn't. And so it was based not on the kind of cultural limitations of Japan, which, for example, if you were defeated by a samurai, what you did was you gave the samurai your sword, or the samurai would give you your sword back, and you had to kill yourself. So instead, the samurai would give the defeated ninja his sword back, and the ninja, instead of killing himself, would kill the samurai. So it was they were very practical and they didn't follow the rules, and that's why they were disliked. They had their own rules and their own conceptual framework, which worked for them. So that's basically the idea. So I like the practicality of that art and the concepts of it, some of which came from China and incorporated a lot of the things from Taiji.
Hmm.
So it was good for me, and it was good exercise. Things that I hadn't done before. I hadn't really done the kind of two-person or multiple-person scenarios that would come up, self-defense scenarios that required me to use my body very differently and understand my body very
Hmm.
very much differently than from Taiji, where everything is done while standing and sinking your weight. This
Hmm.
in ninjutsu, the excuse me, in ninjutsu, it wasn't just sinking your weight. That was only one kind of condition that or one kind of element that would occur. You could, that they called that earthy. There was also fire, where you did an explosive, expanded movement, maybe a preemptive attack. There were times when you would sort of become airborne, air. So the different elements, fire, air, water, that was more like TaiJi, where you'd move very, just with the opponent, without much movement, much visible movement. So there was, and then there was there was a much more than TaiJi talks about. Now, whether it's in TaiJi or not originally, I think maybe some of that stuff was, but I don't think it is now. At least maybe among people who got the inside teaching, which are very few.
Well, what I like is, and what I'm hearing is the approach of just having an open mind and being open to exploring the possibilities of the body. And it's not just one possibility, but there are many, many possibilities.
Yeah, and the use of the mind was very much a part of this. Making the opponent feel that there might be somebody behind him ready to attack him, even though there wasn't. With your energy, blowing the opponent backward. Feeling the opponent's intention to attack, what's called saki. Ki is like chi, the energy, and saki would be the energy of the intention of the opponent to kill you, the killer's intent. And so you would be able to feel, the training involved learning to feel that and to move at just the right time based on that. Not because you're using your analytical mind and your eyes, but your body just would know that and move without your even having necessarily the thought to do it or the intention to do it. And then being able to attack without intention. Although in class we used a lot of intention when we practiced so that the other to make it real, because that's what the other person would experience in a real situation.
You must have some interesting stories where you've gone, wow, how is that possible? Like where, especially when you say you're like blasting someone with their energy. Have you seen some things where you go, nobody's going to believe me? Nobody's going to believe what I just saw?
I think we do that all the time, but are unaware of it. Just a couple of days ago, I was online in a store or something, or I don't remember what it was, but this woman, I was behind this woman, I was sort of waiting for her to move out of the way so I could go ahead. And she turned around and looked at me, she said, I felt there was somebody behind me. And I said to her, that's a pretty high level to be able to know that. But women tend to know that more than men. But you can focus on a person, let's say in a subway train. I don't do that anymore, but when I used to, I would focus on a person who was maybe reading a newspaper, and suddenly they'd look up and they'd feel it. Everyone has that ability. The animals certainly do. If you look at a wild animal and focus on them, they'll turn towards you. They'll turn their heads to look at you. They know. They may not know how to defend against a hunter who has a gun. They're not evolved enough to do that. But against other animals, predators, they'll feel it. And so we all have that. But we mask it with our analytical minds and our awareness of things that is not in that realm of a feeling. We're not
Right.
we're not using what we have. We're not
Right.
using what we have. So the training was to develop that.
Right.
So, for example, and the higher level of that is not even have a person's intention to hurt you. It could be a car that's going through a red light that you don't even have any concept of, and you just don't go because you just can't go. You know you have to wait,
Mm.
and then suddenly a car goes shooting through a red light. You know, you have the green, and the perpendicular direction the car just shoots through, and you know this that happened to me with my wife as a passenger, and she, after the car shot through the red light, my wife said, "Now I know why you were waiting." But I didn't hear anything. I didn't see anything. It was just a feeling that I can't go yet, even though
Wow.
the light turned green. And we all have that. We just disregard it
Yes. I totally
or
agree.
brush it away. Or if we feel it, we brush it away. Oh, that's silly. But it's not.
There's a story actually in the um, intelligence services like the CIA, MI5, MI6, and maybe even the in the police services that if you're tailing somebody, you mustn't look at them. And the closest you can get to looking at them is looking at their feet and not more than 1.5 seconds, because immediately they pick up on it. You're not allowed to look at the person. So there's, uh, without doing the science, there's this, just knowledge. Everyone knows, do not look at them. People feel it. And
Yeah.
Rupert Sheldrake did this experiment. It's been quite successfully reproduced. The sense of being stared at, which I used on my thesis, only at the bachelor's level. So it was very, very interesting reading all his research. And really, there's enormous, yes, there's a lot of studies which sort of say, yeah, we have that ability, but it is almost like I want to say it's another level of consciousness, or almost like a body consciousness. Our body knows, even though our higher levels of thinking, which of course they are higher in a lot of ways, but um, they can sometimes fluff us up, as it were. Yeah. And one thing you mentioned, I've got to say, because I've got these, one of your books is probably in front of me. Yes, I'm going to pull it out. Oh, this is a lovely book. TaiJi Dynamics with a picture of you on the front. Um,
That's not the
uh,
most recent book. The most recent book is Taiji Concepts and Experiments, which has a lot more physics, science in it. The physics, of course, the actual rigorous physics is relegated to the appendix. They wouldn't let me put it in the text, but the text has the same thing, but on an intuitive level, so that you don't have to really know physics to understand it.
it's such a breath of fresh air in the genre, in my opinion. And I like books in the genre. I'm not criticizing other books. They're just I love somebody who's coming as a you have a PhD in experimental physics. So this is obviously somebody. It's like I know what I'm talking about. I'm not saying I know everything, because nobody knows everything, but why don't you try this, or it's experiments? And I felt like, wow, how lovely, somebody saying, don't take my word for it, just try this and see how you feel. And I have that book as well, but I've got it as a Kindle. And the TaiJi Dynamics, I can't get it as a Kindle, I don't think. So I forked out and got it as had to get it sent to Thailand. And I'm thrilled with that book as well. I really appreciate um, the the effort you've obviously gone to. It's not easy to write a book about Tai Chi.
Tell me about that.
No, no, tell me about that.
Very hard, very hard.
Yeah, I mean, tell me,
Um,
how did you get started with Tai Chi? I'm really fascinated to know that.
the well, I was in the 19 around 1970. I had been
Wow.
involved in a lot of physical exercise. Doing there was at that time there was everyone was encouraged to do exercise, and there was this Royal Canadian exercise program, all these different levels that you could reach, doing push-ups and sit-ups, and all these different exercises. And the higher levels where you do a push-up, and while you're in the air you clap your hands, and then I don't remember how many times, and then you come down and do another push-up.
Yeah.
And it was very strenuous, and I was doing that. And pull-ups, I was able to do a pull-up with one arm, either side, both sides.
Wow.
And I was concentrate every time I saw a fence. I'd feel like climbing it and going over for no, just for the fun of it.
You are a ninja.
Yeah, well, I, yeah, strength is a part of that, which I don't have very much of now at the age of 86. But that was what I was concentrating on. And I did running. Not too many people were doing that in those days. And that I went out with this girl who I shouldn't say I went out with her, but I met this girl who I had known when we were very young, like maybe 12, 13 years old. I knew her. And we got together, and she said to me, you're very stiff. And, because I was from doing all that stuff. And she said, you should go to this class, you should go to the school where I'm studying calligraphy. And this was with Cheng Man Cheng,
Right.
and at his school in Chinatown. And you should go there, and they're doing exercise there that you might be interested. You're so interested in exercise. This is one that you should do. So I went there, and I watched them doing what they did, and it didn't look to me to be very useful. It was very relaxed and very slow movement. And I figured, maybe if they were doing it twice as fast with a 10-pound barbell in each hand, maybe that would have some value. But I couldn't see it. And there was this very heavy guy who was there, which, excuse me, there was this very heavy guy that was there who, I, in those days, very few people were overweight. I figured, how could this be a school for health and fitness if there are people like that there?
Mm.
And then the class ended that I was watching, and the same guy started doing these amazing sword movements. It was like he was floating in the air and swinging, spinning around, and his movement was just amazing. I'm sorry. And so I said to myself, maybe there's something to this. And I was very aware of how uncoordinated I was. So and it bothered me that I figured if a car were coming at me, I'm crossing the street and a car were coming at me, I'd just freeze. I wouldn't move correctly. So I said, maybe this will be good for improving my coordination. And so I signed up for a class for 3 months of classes. It was in those days $51 for 3 months, which was a lot of money for me in those days.
Mm.
And I don't know what it would be now. And after a couple of weeks, I just was in love with it, and I have been ever since.
Mm.
I just came to every class I could, and at this point in my life, I it's my main interest, and I put my time into teaching it, practicing it, and trying to spread the knowledge.
It really comes over in the books. I've got to say that's something I think I felt when I was reading it. It's like this man loves what he does. This is I can feel it, which is lovely. And um, it also, I mean, you must have some stories of Chen Manqing himself, because he's quite a famous, I mean, he was in New York, he's quite a famous Taiwanese master, trained with Yang Chengfu, and was called the master of the five arts. Is that right?
Yeah, five excellences. Yes,
Five
it was
excellences.
painting. He was a very famous painter. He could do things that no other painter could do. And somebody who was a very famous painter looked at his paintings and said to him, "The only person who could do this was some master hundreds of years ago. You're a reincarnation of that guy." But calligraphy, he was a famous very proficient calligrapher. He was very knowledgeable about traditional Chinese medicine, and he had studied with very famous people who had knowledge that went way back, and of the herbs and the meridians, and everything, all these elements of traditional Chinese medicine. Very skilled. And that's how Cheng Minqing started studying with Yang Chengfu, because Yang Chengfu's wife, as the story goes, was very sick, and he brought her back to health. T.T. Liang was another one who lived to 102, by the way. But there were a number of people who he had helped with traditional Chinese medicine. But also he was known for his poetry too. But those were five excellences that he was said to have been a master of, or a high-level master of. And he was asked, which one is the hardest of all of the five things that you do? Which is the hardest? And he said, TaiJi.
Yes,
That was the hardest one.
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
No.
TaiJi is not easy.
Yes, I try to tell people that, but it looks easy when they begin, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
yeah. If it's easy, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, but the point is, it's made even harder by the fact that a lot of it was hidden for so long. The terminology, the ways of explaining things, are need to be improved. I feel, and I feel that an understanding of science helps that.
Hmm.
And what happens is people get captured by the philosophy,
Hmm.
even though they're not feeling it in their bodies. The goal is to express it in your own body, not to have it be an academic thing, just an academic thing.
Hmm. Right. And so, do you have any stories of that you want to share with people about an experience you had with Chen
With
Manqing?
Professor Chang,
Hmm. Well,
well, the the first I was with him for 5 years, and then that was after that he passed. But the first 4 years there was very little contact with him. He was more involved in medicine and other things, and but he would teach a little bit. But the last year he taught to a tremendous degree. He had all these classes that he taught. Classes, sword correction, form correction, push hands, taught class in meditation, in I Ching, I think it was. And he really let go with everything at the last year. But when I was started to do push hands, he said to me, "Touch my shoulder." I touched his shoulder and I went flying. I just went flying. I couldn't understand how it happened. I didn't feel anything. Maybe he used his hand, maybe he used his shoulder. And then he said, "Touch it again." And I did. And again, I went flying. And that was just amazing to me, how he could do that. And that opened me up because I was very skeptical about a lot of things. When students would talk about chi, they would say, oh, the chi does this, the chi is this, and the chi is that. And I said to myself, what is this? This is just mumbo jumbo. It wasn't until I actually felt, I said, they don't know what they're talking about. They just are using the word. But now that I feel it, it's a different story. But at the beginning, I was very skeptical of everything. That opened me up. That experience with Professor Chang, and I started to realize that I was wrong in thinking that science can answer all questions. It can't. It just can't. It does a lot. It's a tool, but it's not the only tool. And as they say, if your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That you're so it limits you tremendously. So I started to read books that I would have rejected the thinking of years before, and started to open my mind to things, to meditation, to all kinds of ideas, and just not be restricted in my thinking. So that was a terrific experience that I had. And other times, he would, if I asked a question, his answer would be, just relax. And probably that was what I needed at that time. That if I didn't relax, I wouldn't be able to make progress. And the word, of course, he used in Chinese was song, which means relaxed in English, or is translated into English as relax. And it took a while for me to do that, but it was an amazing change that in me as a result, because I was extremely high strung, and I couldn't relax. I remember taking harpsichord lessons, and my teacher kept saying, you need to relax, you need to relax. But nobody ever told me how to do it. But in TaiJi, they got that across to us.
Yeah. It's a funny one, isn't it? It's relaxation and TaiJi or in martial arts is such an important issue. And it's very hard to explain, and yet TaiJi does a pretty good job of hacking.
Of what?
Hacking. Like a
Hacking?
computer hacker. Yeah, they hack
Oh.
your relaxation. And yeah, you mentioned like when he died, you felt he came to visit you or something.
I'm
Is that
sorry,
right?
change what?
You felt like when he died, when Professor Chen Manqing died, he came to visit you, or you got a
Well,
message from him?
over the years, I've had a number of dreams about him coming to me and correcting me or telling me different things. And the one dream I had, he came to me and gave me a correction, which when I tried it, I was amazed. He said, on the first move, when you step and the foot comes down, you have to relax that leg. There's tension in the leg, which I was totally unaware of. And then I did, when I woke up and tried it, I saw he was right. That was true. Now, you could say, well, maybe that's your subconscious telling you that. Maybe it wasn't he who was coming to me, and even though his body is in the grave, his consciousness coming to me. And I had another dream where he came to me and said, you should eat sorrel. You should eat sorrel. And I woke up and I said, you know, it was a day when there was a farmer's market in my town. I said, I'll go down there and see if they have sorrel. I had never seen it before. I didn't even know what it looked like. And guess what? It was there. Now, maybe I'd seen it before and never noticed it, but there it was. And I brought it home and I tried eating it. It was extremely sour. And so I didn't know. I said to myself, well, you know, I should have asked him, should I eat it raw or should I cook it? Because I'm used to eating green vegetables raw whenever possible. So, but anyway, he didn't tell me why I should eat it or what it would do. But that was interesting. I mean, I would never have thought of buying sorrel. And then the most recent dream I had, he came to me and he said, you know, when you do the single whip, the downward single whip, you turn your left foot out at 45 degrees. And you should keep it straight. And I woke up and I said, that's ridiculous. Because, first of all, we were taught to turn it out by the senior students so that you would, when you came up into Golden Cock stands on one leg, in the next move, where you're standing on one leg, you'd have the stability. If the foot is pointed in the same direction as your navel, it's hard to have stability. But if it's angled at 45 degrees, that gives you a little more sideways stability. So I said to myself, that doesn't make any sense. And I tried it. It didn't seem to be right to me. So I was very skeptical. Whether the question comes up, am I making this up? Did it come from my subconscious mind? Is it a spurious thing? Or is it really a connection with Cheng Man Cheng that occurred, or whoever it is that's telling me whatever? So I decided I would go and see how students did that move who were students of his in Taiwan or students of his before he even came to the United States. And I looked at them and they all had their feet straight, not angled at 45 degrees, in a cardinal direction. And this one woman who was a supposedly pretty high level master who had studied with him, maybe a disciple of his, I could see she wanted to turn it out, but then kept it straight. So that to me was very interesting, that he chose something to tell me that I could corroborate. Two, that it was something that is really not a very serious error on my part. Of all the things that I've added to what I've learned from him, I feel I've taken it quite a bit farther because I've had a lot of other teachers who I shouldn't say a lot, but other teachers with whom I stayed for long periods of time, on the order of decades, who from whom I received an understanding of certain things that were total mysteries to me. And when I studied with Cheng Man Cheng, or even thereafter, until I got to those teachers, and I have added those in. Not every, I think I haven't changed the form. I haven't really done anything that would be tampering. All I've done is modified it according to what I feel it really would really fit the principles better. So he could have picked any one of those things to talk about, to tell me, but in the dream, but didn't. Or, say, no, you that's not the way I taught you. You changed it. He didn't say that. So I felt that he really wanted, that he picked something that would let me know that it really was he who was watching me.
Mm.
And two, that he approves of what I'm doing and what I'm teaching. And some of the things that I've added are things that he actually has talked about in books, written in books. One of them is dong and dang. Dong dang is move and swing, which I don't see any of his students, even the original ones, doing. In Taiwan maybe, but not in the United States.
Mm.
And the other is the Neijin, which is expansive, which in my interpretation is expansive strength. I don't see that there are many who have that.
Mm. Yes, I appreciated that interpretation in the most recent book where you're experimenting. I really like that explanation. Yeah.
Of the Neijin.
Yes. Yeah, I thought it
Yeah.
was good. It adds to the explanations out there. It's not, it's not a repetition, and that's always interesting.
Yeah.
So
See, this is the way I look at it. If they tell you to do something and they don't say it right, it might be something that's impossible to do. So they say, imagine the top of your head suspended from above.
mm,
Now, when you do have that image, you now are believing that that's possible, and it's not. There's nothing suspending your head.
mm,
And if it were, how could that happen in your body?
mm,
That something is pulling your head up. The only thing you can do is extend your cervical spine and have the atlas lift your head up by expanding your spine. And then they say, imagine a weight on your tailbone. There's no weight on your tailbone. I mean, it weighs maybe an ounce or two, a few ounces,
mm,
but they say 1,000-pound weight. And instead, if you extend the spine upward, the top of the spine upward, and the bottom of the spine downward, and everything in between, you're getting what they're talking about. Not only that, but it's extremely exhilarating, and it just changes everything. But when you say that, think of expanding your spine, people don't believe it's possible. Extending, they don't think that muscles can extend. They can only contract. Well, if you believe that, then you're never, how can you get that? But if you believe, or I should say, accept the idea, or have some trust in that idea that muscles can extend, then that's the only way that that's possible. I don't see any other way that your head, you can get that extension of the head upward. And it's not the head, it's the spine. The head just rests on the spine. And the other thing they say is imagine a weight on your chin. If you just balance your head on the top atlas by relaxing all this musculature and feeling the balance, that's the state. That's the correct state. Why tell a person, give a person an image instead of going to anatomy and physiology? It didn't exist hundreds of years ago in China, but it does exist now. Why not utilize that? And then the students can get that very quickly. I find the students get that right away.
yeah.
I have a woman who has Parkinson's, and she's all hunched over. And she started with me maybe a few months ago. And her posture, she's like a question mark. She could barely walk. She kept, as she's standing there, she starts moving backwards for her balance. I watched her walk in a week ago, or a few days ago when I had the class, and her head is already up, and her balance is better, because I talked to her about that and gave her some exercises to do. So I think now it sounds like I'm bragging, but it's the principle. It's the approach to giving the person something that they can feel inside that really exists, rather than some figmentary thing that is going to lead you astray or
Right.
can lead you astray. So a
Right.
heavy weight on your chin will bring your chin down, but that's not where it's supposed to be.
Right.
Pulling your tailbone down by tilting your pelvis, which is a separate piece of anatomy anyway,
Okay.
isn't going to help that.
Right. I see where you're coming from with that. And I think anybody be grateful again that you're adding to the possible explanations for people. And really I get this happiness inside when you're talking about this person with Parkinson's and how they're changing. Because I think you must have experienced your body changing as you've done Tai Chi, like the whole body just sort of slowly changes. And you're sort of, I won't say you're a different person, but in a way you are a different person.
Well, yes. And the fact that muscles can extend is something I learned in the early 1970s when I studied with Elaine Summers, who is a famous choreographer and dancer and film. And she was a genius. And I was very hunched over and in a lot of pain.
Mm,
And that was, that was how many years ago? 50 years?
mm.
50 years ago.
Wow.
And I was becoming very, very limited in everything I could do. I'd have to lie on the floor a few times a day on my back to relieve the pain.
Oh,
And
goodness.
the idea that muscles can extend was something that I took very seriously, and brought it into Taiji and understood that that's what they're talking about when they say Nei Jin. They mean ex- expansion from the inside. And Ne means inner, inside,
Mm,
and Jin is strength, but it's not ordinary strength. If you look it up in in a Chinese dictionary now, it'll just say ordinary, strength, but it's not. It's way beyond that. It's a highly trained strength that's in all
mm,
martial arts. But Neijin is in Taiji,
mm.
and they talk about it, but people don't get it because it's not explained.
Robert, we've come to the end of our time today, but I'd love to talk to you again because I feel you've got some more stories in there. I like to keep everybody around 40 minutes because I think it's a good manageable length. And I wanted a story where we could end it, but I mean that is just your story of lying on the ground and then learning that your muscles can expand in a different way, and you can be more instead of like a rubber band, you can be more like a balloon. That's a wonderful image for everybody. So thank you. I think it's going to inspire some people. Some people won't agree, with your opinion, but that's fine. But it's going to inspire the people, and that's what we're there for, isn't it?
I agree. Thank you. Thank you
Thank you so
for
much.
this. I appreciate it.